For 12 years, I was the son who stayed. I want to tell you what that phrase means before you assume you know. It doesn't mean sacrifice in the way people talk about sacrifice. The clean version with the clear decision and the acknowledged cost. It means Tuesday mornings driving my father to dialysis and being back at the office by 9. It means calling my mother every day for 4 years after my father died because she stopped turning off the TV at night. It means showing up, again and again, to a situation that nobody ever looked at directly enough to name. I am 38 years old. My name is Thomas Kelly. I work as a construction project manager at a firm in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I live 12 minutes from the house I grew up in. My sister Claire is 41. She lives in Manhattan. She has lived in Manhattan for 16 years. I want to be very clear about something. I do not blame Claire for leaving. I never have. You don't get to choose who in a family has the ambition that requires leaving and who has the attachment that requires staying. Those are not moral positions. They're just different people making different choices in the same set of circumstances. What I blame her for is what she sent on the Thursday in October, while I was standing in the parking lot of Lakewood Memorial Hospital after our mother had surgery for a broken hip. I had been at the hospital since 4 in the morning. I hadn't eaten. I'd called the surgery waiting room 3 times. I'd spoken to the surgeon, spoken to the attending nurse, updated the discharge paperwork, called my mother's neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, to ask her to water the plants, and arranged for a physical therapist consult for the following week. My phone buzzed. A group text. 17 recipients. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, our family friends from church, my mother's book club, from Claire. Hi everyone, as many of you know, Mom had surgery this morning after a fall. She's out and stable. Thomas has been managing her care for a while now and doing his best, but I think this is the moment for the family to step up and get organized. I'm flying in Friday, and I'll be taking charge of coordinating her next steps, including her care arrangements and the house situation. Thanks for all the love and prayers. We'll keep everyone updated. See, I read it in the parking lot, under the lights, with a cup of cold coffee in my hand that I didn't drink. Thomas has been managing her care for a while now and doing his best. His best. I stood there in October cold and I thought about 12 years. I thought about everything a 12-year summary does not contain. The specific texture of 4,368 individual mornings. The number of times I have watched someone sleep in a hospital chair. The specific sound my father made during dialysis in his last year. The particular way my mother's voice changed after he died, and the way it has been slowly changing back, and how I have been keeping track of that change because I am the one who is there to track it. His best. I didn't respond to the text that night. I drove home. I sat in the kitchen of the house I grew up in. Not my house, her house, which I have been keeping alive for 12 years, and I ate cereal at the kitchen table and looked at her reading chair in the corner of the living room. Then I thought about everything I had not yet shown anyone. Let me take you back to the beginning of the 12 years, because the text didn't come out of nowhere, and I didn't come out of nowhere, and the story doesn't make sense without the foundation under it. My parents were Patrick and Helen Kelly. My father drove a delivery truck for a regional food distributor for 30 years. My mother worked half-time at the school district administrative office until she retired in 2014. They were not wealthy. They were not complicated. They loved their kids in the particular Irish Catholic Scranton way that expressed itself primarily through criticism that was actually concern, and food that was actually love, and silence about anything difficult that was actually the deepest form of it. Claire was their firstborn, and she was extraordinary from the beginning in the ways that firstborns sometimes are driven. High-achieving, clear about what she wanted, and clear about how far she intended to go to get it. She got a full scholarship to Columbia. She moved to New York at 22. Within 5 years, she was a senior analyst at a financial firm. She calls home on Sundays. She sends money at Christmas. She comes back twice a year. I was their second child. And I was not, and am not, extraordinary in the same visible ways. I was good at construction math. I liked building things with my hands. I did a year of community college and then took a job at DeLuca Construction, where I have worked my way up over 14 years to project manager. I know every subcontractor in Lackawanna County. I know load-bearing walls and drainage slopes, and the specific way old houses in this part of Pennsylvania settle after the first hard winter. I stayed because I wanted to stay. That's the part people don't believe, and I understand why, but it's true. I love this city. I love the particular topography of a place that was once industrial and is figuring out what it wants to be next. I love the coffee at the diner on Wyoming Avenue and the way the mountains look in November and the fact that I can have lunch with my mother on a Tuesday. I was not a saint who gave up his dreams. I was a person who actually had these dreams, specific and located, and I stayed to build them. The architecture certification took 5 years. I want to be precise about that. 5 years of night classes through an online program, taken between 8 and 11 p.m. After work, after visiting my mother, after everything the day had already asked of me. I did it because at 32 I realized that construction was what I did, but design was what I thought about the relationship between a building and the people who needed it. The specific problem of how you make space that helps people be more fully themselves. I passed my exams in March. I told no one except my friend Marcus, who I've known since the 7th grade, and who celebrated by taking me out for wings and spending most of the evening asking me to explain what the certification actually meant, which I eventually gave up trying to do. I didn't tell my mother, not because I was hiding it, because I was planning to tell her at the right moment, and then my father's health accelerated in that direction, and the right moment kept becoming the wrong moment, and then my father died, and the timing felt strange, and then she was adjusting to living alone. And then I was focused on being there for her. And then it was just something I had. In September of this year, 6 weeks before the group text, I received notification that I had been selected as the primary design consultant for the Lackawanna Community Hub renovation, a building on the east side of Scranton that had been a community center in the 1960s and 70s, had fallen into disrepair and was now being revived through a community development fund. My job, to design its renovation in a way that served the people who would actually use it. It was the first architectural commission of my life. It was also not a headline, not a magazine feature, not the kind of thing you announce at dinner or post online. It was a building in a city most people don't think about, being renovated for a neighborhood most people don't visit, designed by someone nobody had heard of. It was exactly what I wanted. I didn't tell my mother, or Claire, or anyone except Marcus, who again celebrated with wings and again struggled to understand the scope. The Thursday in October, my mother was walking from the kitchen to the reading chair when she fell. Fractured hip, right side. I got the call at 6:15 in the morning, and I was at the hospital by 7. By 4 in the afternoon, she was out of surgery and stable. By 4:15, Claire had sent the group text. Claire arrived Friday afternoon. I picked her up at the airport. She looked the way she always looked when she came home. Slightly overdressed for Scranton, slightly too brisk in her movements, slightly too loud in her certainty. She hugged me on the curb and said, "You look tired," and I said I'm fine, and we drove to the hospital without talking much. My mother was awake, more alert than I'd expected. Claire sat on one side of the bed and held our mother's hand and cried a little. Which was real crying. She loves our mother. That is not complicated. And our mother patted her hand and said something about not being dramatic, which made us both smile. For the first hour, it was fine. We ate bad vending machine sandwiches in the corridor. Claire asked about the physical therapist consult I'd arranged and said, "Good." Good in a tone that suggested she was adding it to her own list, rather than noting that I had already handled it. I let it go. Then Claire pulled out her phone. She had a spreadsheet. This is not a complaint about spreadsheets. Claire thinks in systems, and she always has. What she had was a detailed, color-coded plan for our mother's care and recovery and eventual future living arrangements. And she had built it during her flight from New York. And it was thorough, and it was based on the assumption that the primary thing she was arriving to do was impose order on a situation that had been running without it. "I've been looking at some assisted living options," she said. "There's a really nice place in Clark's Summit. Memory support wing, activities, the whole thing." I looked at her. "Mom doesn't have memory issues. Not yet. But we should be planning ahead. She's recovering from a hip fracture. She doesn't need a memory support wing." I'm being proactive. I put my sandwich down on the table. "When did you last talk to her neurologist?" I've been meaning to call. I had a 20-minute conversation with him in September. He said she's in the normal range for her age. No signs of anything progressive. Claire looked at her spreadsheet. "Still, the house is a lot for her to manage. I help her manage it." "I know you do." She said it too quickly. "But Thomas, you can't do this forever." I looked at the window. I looked at my hands on the table. I thought about the phrase "doing his best." And I thought about how it functioned in the group text. And I thought about what it suggested about how Claire understood what I had been doing for 12 years. I said, "What do you mean by that?" "I just mean," she gestured vaguely, "you have your own life, your career. You shouldn't have to be running her whole situation." "I'm not running it because I have to. I know. I'm running it because I live here, and I choose to be here. And because I actually want." I stopped. "Because you actually want what?" I shook my head. "Nothing." What else is in the spreadsheet? The thing I did not say in that corridor, and have been thinking about since, was because I actually want her to stay in her house. Because the alternative, the Clark Summit Memory Wing, the assisted living facility, is not a solution to a problem. It's the erasure of a life. It's 17 family photos taken off 17 walls. It's the reading chair in a pile with a $40 sticker on it. I know this specifically because on Saturday morning, while our mother was sleeping, I walked through the house with a clipboard, noting what needed to be done for her return grab bars in the bathroom, a temporary ramp for the back steps, rearranging the bedroom. So the path to the bathroom was clear, and Claire walked through behind me with a different clipboard. She was inventorying. She wasn't trying to hide it. She said, "Just getting a sense of what's here," and I nodded and said nothing. But I watched her note the reading chair with a pencil mark and write something beside it. When she left the room, I went over and looked at what she'd written. Donate, sell, check market value first. I need to tell you something about that chair, because it matters to this story, and it matters to why the story is actually about. My mother bought that chair in 1993 from a furniture store on Penn Avenue that no longer exists. It's a wingback, green fabric, slightly worn on the right armrest from years of her resting her elbow there while she read. She read to me in that chair every night until I was old enough to read myself, and then she kept reading in it while I read beside her on the floor. And when I was 12, and my grandmother died, she sat in that chair for 3 days, and I sat on the floor beside her and didn't say anything, and that was the right thing to do. For 12 years, that chair has been in the corner of the living room by the good lamp. Every morning when I bring her tea, she is either in it or on her way to it. It is not an antique. It is not valuable. It is the physical location of something that does not have a name in English, the specific safety of a place that has absorbed enough of someone's living to become part of who they are. Claire had marked it for sale, not because she wanted to erase our mother. I need to say that clearly. She had marked it for sale because she had looked at a room and seen furniture, and she had done this without understanding that furniture, when someone has been sitting in it long enough, becomes something else. And she had not understood that because she had not been in the room long enough to know. That is the whole story. In one paragraph. Everything else is context. The afternoon of the second day, I was in the kitchen making coffee when my phone buzzed. A new comment on the group text. My Aunt Linda. Thank goodness, Claire is there to take charge. Thomas, I know you've been doing your best, but you must be exhausted. I set my phone face down on the counter. I finished making the coffee. I took a mug to Claire in the living room and one to our mother's neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, who had come to check on things. And then I drove to the Lackawanna Community Hub project site. I parked. I sat in the car for 10 minutes. Then I got out and walked around the building in the cold. It was a 1,963 concrete block building, single story, about 11,000 square feet. The roof had been patched 3 times and needed replacing. The windows were original inefficient, but beautiful if you cleaned them properly. The floor plan was a series of large open rooms that had been subdivided badly in the 1990s with cheap partition walls. My plans were on a laptop in the trunk of my car. I had been developing them for 6 weeks. They called for removing the partition walls, restoring the central hall to its original proportions, adding a new east-facing window system to bring in natural light, and redesigning the entrance to be genuinely welcoming rather than just functional. I got the laptop. I sat on the hood of my car and opened it and looked at the plans in the cold. Nobody had asked me about this project. Not my mother, not Claire, not anyone in the group text. I had been carrying it alone for 6 weeks, the same way I had been carrying the certification for 3 years, the same way I had been carrying the daily weight of presents for 12. I sat on the hood of my car outside a building. I was designing for a community that had been here my whole life, and I thought, this is what happens when you do everything quietly. People mistake your quiet for nothing. Then I drove back to the house. Our mother came home from the hospital on Monday, 8 days after the fall. I had spent the weekend making modifications. The bathroom grab bars took 2 hours. The temporary ramp for the back steps took 4, because the angle of the steps required a custom slope, and I had to fabricate the railing attachment points myself. The bedroom rearrangement took an hour. I moved the reading chair from the corner of the living room to the bedroom, closer to the window, so she'd have somewhere comfortable to sit while she recovered. When Claire walked through the modified house on Sunday afternoon, she said, "Oh, this all looks great," in the tone of someone assessing work that had been done to her specification, even though she had not specified any of it. Our mother came home Monday. Claire and I brought her in together. She stood in the doorway of the bedroom and saw the reading chair by the window and said, very quietly, "Oh, good." That was all. Just, "Oh, good." I looked at her. She was already moving toward it. For the next several days, we established a rhythm. I came in the morning before work. Claire was there in the evenings. We rotated well, in the practical logistics sense. We did not talk about the spreadsheet, or the group text, or the assisted living facility, or the reading chair sticker. The not talking felt thick, like a room with too much furniture. Tuesday evening, I arrived to find Claire on the phone in the kitchen, speaking with someone I gradually understood was the Clark Summit facility. She had her back to the hallway. The kitchen door was half open. I stood in the hall. The timeline we're looking at is probably spring, Claire was saying. She'll need PT through the winter, but once she's mobile again, we want to think about the transition. Yes, I can be back in November to do a tour. I heard her shift position. My brother is local. He can facilitate the details. He's good at that. He's good at that. I looked down the hallway at our mother's bedroom door, which was closed because she was sleeping. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds. He's good at that? Not. He has been here every morning for 12 years. Not. He knows her neurologist by name. Not. He reorganized the bedroom and built the ramp and moved the reading chair to the window because he knows her well enough to know which window has the right light. Just. He's good at the details. Good at the details. I walked back out the front door without going into the kitchen. I sat in my car. I called Marcus. "She's making care home calls," I said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He does this, he processes before responding, which I have always found calming. Then, "What did you say?" "I didn't go in." "Thomas, I know. You have to say something." "I know. You've been not saying something for 12 years. That landed somewhere specific." I didn't answer it directly. "Show me the hub plans tomorrow," I said instead. "I need to explain them to someone." Marcus came to the site on Wednesday afternoon. We walked the building together. I showed him the plans on the laptop. He looked at them for a long time. Not the 12-second glance I expected. He actually looked. Then he said, "You designed all this. Over 6 weeks, yeah." "No, I mean, you personally designed it. You drew this." "I did the drafts in the software, yeah." He looked at the building. He looked back at the plans. "Tom, this is a real thing you made. That's what the certification is for." "Does Claire know about the certification?" I looked at the building. "No." "Does your mom?" "No." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Who knows?" "You, the Development Fund Board, my supervising architect. That's 3 people. I know. You've been carrying a whole life that 3 people know about." "Marcus, I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying it out loud so you can hear it." I looked at the building. At the windows I was going to restore. At the entrance I was going to redesign so it said welcome instead of just door. "It's hard to show people things," I said. "I know," he said. "But sometimes you have to, because otherwise people keep assuming things." The conversation with Claire happened on Thursday evening. Not planned. I didn't arrive intending to have it. I arrived with soup from the diner on Wyoming Avenue, chicken and rice, which our mother has eaten since I was a child. Whenever anything was wrong, and Claire was at the kitchen table with her laptop open and her phone beside it with the Clark Summit Facility website on the screen. I put the soup down. I sat across from her. She looked up. Something in her face registered what was coming. "I don't want to fight," she said immediately. "I don't either. But you're about to say something." "Yes." She closed the laptop. That was a good sign. She looked at me. "I heard your phone call Tuesday," I said. She was quiet. "The part where you told them you could come in November to tour. The part where you said the timeline was spring." "Thomas." "The part where you said your brother is good at the details." She looked at the table. "I need to ask you something," I said. "And I need you to actually think about the answer." She nodded once. "When is the last time you asked me what I wanted?" "For Mom. For this situation. Not logistics. What I wanted." She opened her mouth. Closed it. "I'm not asking because I think you're a bad person," I said. "I'm asking because I genuinely don't know the answer." A long pause. "I assumed," she said finally, "that you'd tell me if something wasn't working. I assumed the same thing about you." We sat with that. "I don't want her in assisted living," I said. "Not now. Not in the spring. Not until she needs a level of care that I genuinely cannot provide. And we are nowhere near that. The house is a lot. I know what the house is. I've been in it every day for 12 years. I kept my voice even. I've also been doing something else for the last 6 weeks that I haven't told you about." "Or, Mom." Claire frowned. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone. I opened the hub plans. I turned the phone toward her. She looked at it. "What is this?" "The community center renovation on the east side. I'm the design consultant." "You what?" "I got my architecture certification 3 years ago, in March. I've been doing coursework since 2018. She stared at the phone. "At the plans." "Tom, I know I didn't tell you. I'm telling you now." She kept looking at the plans. Something was happening in her face that I had not expected and could not immediately identify. Not pride exactly. Something more complicated. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because there was never a right moment. and because I stopped. Then I said the true thing. Because in our family, my life has always been the context for other people's stories, not the story. That one hit the room hard. Claire didn't speak for a long time. Then, I didn't know that was how it felt. I know you didn't. I thought. She stopped. I thought you were okay. I thought you liked it here. I thought everything was... I do like it here, I said. I love it here. That's not the problem. The problem is that you can love a place and love the people in it and still want someone to notice what you're doing. The house was quiet. Down the hall, I could hear the particular sound of the TV in our mother's room. I'm sorry, Claire said. It was not a perfect apology. It was not an apology for 12 specific years with 12 specific memories attached. It was 2 words in a kitchen in October. But she was looking at me when she said them, and she wasn't crying in the way people cry to redirect a conversation, and she meant them. I nodded. What does she want? Claire asked. Mom, have you asked her? I have. She wants to stay in the house, even with the recovery, especially during the recovery. She said I almost smiled. She said she'd rather die in a familiar chair than live forever in a comfortable one. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she also almost smiled. That sounds like her. Yeah. From down the hall, our mother's voice. Are you two talking about me? We looked at each other. Yes. I called back. Good, she said. Come in here. We went into the bedroom. She was sitting in the reading chair, which I had moved to the window with the right light. She had a book open on her lap that she was not reading. She looked at us both the way she had always looked at us. Not the soft look of parental approval, but the precise look of a woman who spent 40 years working with other people's children and knows when someone is not saying the important thing. Sit down, she said. We sat. She looked at Claire first. You've been here 3 days, and you haven't asked Thomas once how any of this has been. Claire opened her mouth. I'm not angry, our mother said. I'm telling you. She shifted in the chair, still careful, still protective of the hip, and looked at the window. Thomas came to the hospital the morning after your father died and didn't leave for 2 days, she said. You were in New York. I know why. I'm not saying it was wrong, but I want you to understand that I have been watching your brother do things for me that I never asked him to do, that I would never have thought to ask for, because they were things you only know to do if you've been watching someone closely for a long time. She looked at Claire. Your brother has been watching me closely for a long time. Silence. The TV had gone quiet. Outside, rain had started against the window. I know, Claire said, quietly, like something letting go. Good, our mother said. Then she looked at me. Now, tell me about the building. I looked at her. Marcus told me you've been working on something, she said. He calls me every Sunday. He's a good man. I looked at Marcus's name silently in my head for a moment, with specific and profound gratitude. It's a community center, I said. On the east side. Show me. I pulled out my phone. I handed it to her. She looked at the plans for a long time. The same way Marcus had looked, not the 12-second glance, but the actual looking. Then she said, You designed this. I did. When does it open? Spring. If everything stays on schedule. She handed the phone back to me. She looked at the window and the rain. Your father would have liked to see this, she said. The room held that sentence for a while without anyone adding anything to it. Claire stayed for 2 more weeks. The Clark Summit facility came off the spreadsheet. We worked out a real arrangement together, one that involved me continuing to be here because I wanted to be, and Claire coming more frequently because she was going to make that change, and a weekly video call so our mother could see Claire's face without needing to say she missed it. The care plan we built was not a spreadsheet. It was a conversation that took 3 evenings and involved our mother telling us both, at various points, to stop treating her like a project and start treating her like a person. She was right. I want to tell you what it looked like when Claire left. We stood on the front steps in the November cold. She had her bag. She'd called the car to the airport. She looked at me for a moment, in the way I have not seen her look at me since we were children, without the layer of assumption between us that had been building for 16 years. "The building is going to be good," she said. "I think so. Will you send me updates?" "I will." She hugged me. Then she said, into my shoulder, something I will not repeat, because it was private. But it was the right thing, and she said it like she meant it, and I believe she did. Then she got in the car. I stood on the steps until the car was gone. Then I went inside and made tea and sat at the kitchen table in the quiet. There are things that did not resolve. I want to be honest about that, because the stories that only tell you what healed are only telling you part of the truth. My mother still has her hard mornings. There are weeks when the weight of being present for someone else's difficulty is heavier than I have words for. The architecture certification still exists in a world where most people don't know about it. The group text is still in my phone, still read by 17 people, still containing the words "doing his best." I have not asked Claire to apologize for the group text. I don't think I need to now. What I needed was not an apology for one text. What I needed was to be seen. And she saw me. Late. Imperfectly. Through a conversation in a kitchen in October. But she saw me. That is different from what I expected. I expected nothing. What I got was something. The Lackawanna Community Hub renovation broke ground in December. I stood at the site on the first morning, the ground frozen, and watched the crew I knew by name begin the work I had drawn. Marcus was there. He brought coffee in cups from the Wyoming Avenue diner. My mother came, I drove her. She insisted, and she stood in the cold in her good coat and looked at the building that was about to become something different. "Is that the window you're replacing?" she asked. "Those 4, yes." She looked at them. "What's going in?" "A wood frame system. South-facing. 12 feet high. Will there be light in the mornings?" "From 7 to about 2. Yes." She nodded. Then she took my arm, partly for steadiness on the uneven ground, partly just for the taking, and looked at the building. We stood there a while in the December cold, watching work begin. The reading chair is in her bedroom now, by the window with the right light. I moved it before anyone could put a sticker on it. She hasn't commented on it being there. She doesn't have to. Every morning when I bring her tea, she is either in it or on her way to it. That's enough. That is more than enough. I have been thinking about the group text for a long time, about the phrase "doing his best," about what it means to be described that way by someone who loves you not maliciously, just without looking. I understand now that Claire was not trying to diminish me. She was trying to organize a situation that frightened her, and she organized it with the information she had. And the information she had was incomplete because I had not given it to her. Some of that is on her, some of it is on me. The part that's on me is this. For 12 years, I carried a life quietly because I believed that quiet was the same as humble, and humble was what I was supposed to be. I did not understand until October that quiet, held too long, becomes invisible, and invisible people cannot be chosen. They can only be used. I'm done being invisible. The building opens in the spring. The plans are done. The crew is good. The east windows are going to bring in morning light that will fill a room where people used to have to turn on fluorescence at noon. I designed that. My name is on the architectural documents. My mother knows. Here's the question I've been sitting with, and I'll leave it with you. Selena Lawson left with $200 and her courage and built something far away. I stayed with nothing and built something here. Different journeys. Same destination, the place where someone finally sees you clearly. But I want to ask you this. Is there someone in your life who has been present for so long you've stopped seeing what that presence actually costs? Someone who shows up so reliably that you've confused their reliability with availability, as if being willing to do something means they have no other use for their time. Those people don't always leave to get your attention. Sometimes they just keep showing up. That's the harder love. The one that doesn't announce itself. The one that builds something quietly, in the cold. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been that person? Or have you had one?